One ordinary traffic stop turned into a nightmare no officer could prepare for. When Detective Holt pulled over a woman who looked exactly like his dead daughter, his world spun out of control, and what he spotted inside her car left him shaken to the core. Stay with us until the end to uncover the shocking truth behind this encounter. And before we begin, tell us in the comments, do you believe fate brings people together for a reason? Detective Raymond Holt had spent nearly 30 years wearing a badge in Asheville, North Carolina. He had seen the best and worst the city could offer, from small acts of kindness to crimes that left scars on families. To his colleagues, he was reliable, a man who never let emotion interfere with his duty. But those who truly knew him understood there was a shadow behind his steady presence. A shadow born the day he lost his daughter, Emily. Emily had been his pride, the child who carried light into every room. Bright, determined, and endlessly compassionate, she was the kind of young woman who believed she could change the world. Against his pleading, she joined a volunteer mission abroad after a devastating earthquake. She wanted to rebuild schools and comfort children who had lost everything. Raymond tried to stop her, warning that the work was dangerous, the travel unpredictable. But Emily only smiled, insisting she had a duty to help. Days later, news arrived that a bus carrying relief workers had gone over a collapsed road. Emily was among the dead. For years, Raymond replayed that decision like a broken record. If he had spoken more firmly, if he had kept her home, maybe she would still be alive. Instead, she was gone, and he was left with the unbearable weight of a father who had failed his child. The grief had settled into his bones. Each patrol he drove wasn't just a job, it was a ritual of distraction, a way to silence the memories that haunted him when nights grew quiet. On an autumn afternoon, with the sun casting long shadows across the Blue Ridge Mountains, Raymond noticed a silver sedan up ahead. At first, it was nothing out of the ordinary. But as he closed the distance, something about the driver caught his attention. A familiar line in her posture, the tilt of her head. And then, as her face shifted in the side mirror, his breath stopped. He gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. The face staring back at him was Emily's, not just a vague resemblance. It was her eyes, her cheekbones, her youthful intensity, alive in someone else. For a heartbeat, Raymond wondered if he had finally lost his mind. Before he knew what he was doing, he flicked on his patrol lights. The sedan slowed obediently and pulled to the shoulder. Raymond sat frozen for a moment, his chest pounding, before forcing himself to step out of the cruiser. His boots felt heavier than they ever had. Each step toward the car was like wading through memory. The graduation photos, the hospital report, the closed casket. The window rolled down and his world tilted. The young woman behind the wheel could have been Emily's twin. Raymond's throat tightened, and for a terrifying second he thought he might collapse right there on the roadside. "Good evening, officer," she said, her tone polite, calm, unknowing. "Is everything all?" Her voice wasn't Emily's, but the echo was enough to unsteady him. Raymond managed to nod, though his words caught. She introduced herself as Veronica Delgado, a teacher at a local community school. Her smile was gentle, but to Raymond it cut like glass. Then his eyes shifted, and that was when he saw it. Resting on the dashboard was a small handmade friendship bracelet, woven from colorful threads in a simple pattern. Raymond's breath hitched in his throat. He knew that bracelet. He had seen it once before, years ago, on Emily's wrist in photographs she had mailed home from her mission abroad. His pulse thundered in his ears. The face, the bracelet, the impossible familiarity. It was as though fate had reached across time and dropped this woman in his path. Raymond stood by the driver's window, unable to mask the tremor in his hands. The woman, Veronica, tilted her head, her expression softening, as she noticed the way his gaze lingered not on her license or the road, but on her face, as if he were staring at a ghost. "Officer, are you sure you're all right?" she asked carefully. Her tone carried more concern than fear. Raymond forced himself to clear his throat, but his voice cracked. "I'm sorry. For a moment, I thought you were someone else." He hesitated, the weight of the words dragging them out. "You look exactly like my daughter." Veronica's polite smile faded into quiet shock. She shifted slightly in her seat, unsure of what to say. Raymond's eyes, however, had already drifted back to the bracelet on her dashboard. The colors gleamed in the fading light, weaving memories he had tried for years to bury. He lifted a finger toward it, his hand shaking. "That bracelet," he whispered. "Where did you get it?" Veronica followed his gaze and picked it up gently, holding it in her palm. "This?" she asked. "It was made for me years ago, during a volunteer trip overseas. The children in the village wove them for all of us as thank you gifts." Her tone carried a hint of nostalgia, a weight that told him this wasn't just a trinket. Raymond's heart clenched. His daughter had written about those same children, even sent home a photo where she was laughing with them, one of those bracelets tied proudly around her wrist. He swallowed hard, the realization creeping closer with every word. "Which village?" he asked quickly, his voice rising before he could steady it. "Where were you?" Veronica hesitated, then answered. "It was after the earthquake in Central America. I joined a relief group. We were helping rebuild schools, handing out supplies, doing whatever we could." She looked down at the bracelet. "It feels like a lifetime ago." Raymond's knees nearly gave out. His pulse thundered in his ears. That was Emily's mission, the same one she had died on. The resemblance, the bracelet, the village. It was no coincidence. Veronica glanced back at him, reading the storm in his eyes. "Officer," she said gently, "why does this matter so much to you?" Raymond drew a shaky breath. "Because my daughter was there too. She never came back." The words fell heavy in the space between them. Veronica's eyes widened, her fingers tightening around the bracelet as though it suddenly carried a weight far greater than thread. For a long moment, silence filled the car. Veronica stared at the bracelet, her breathing uneven, her lips trembling as if she wanted to speak but couldn't. The weight of Raymond's confession pressed into her like stone. Finally, she looked up, her eyes shimmering. "Your daughter," she whispered. "Her name wasn't Emily, was it?" Raymond's chest tightened. "Emily Holt," he said, forcing the name past the lump in his throat. Even now, speaking it aloud was like reopening a wound. Veronica closed her eyes briefly, and when she opened them, tears clung to her lashes. "I knew her," she said softly. "I sat near her on the bus that day." Raymond's grip on the doorframe faltered, his knees weakening. He had imagined this moment countless times. A survivor, someone who might tell him the truth of Emily's last hours. But he had never believed it would come. You were there?" His voice cracked, raw with desperate hope. Veronica nodded slowly. "Yes, I was there." Her words trembled as they left her lips. When the road collapsed, everything happened so fast. People were screaming, the children were terrified. I couldn't move, but Emily, she wasn't afraid. She went from row to row, holding their hands, telling them it would be all right. She sat beside me for a moment. She reached out, squeezed my hand. Veronica faltered, her own hand now trembling as she held the bracelet. And she told me not to panic. She was calm even then, braver than anyone else. Raymond pressed a hand against his face as tears broke free. For years, the question had tormented him. Had Emily been afraid? Had she suffered? Had she known he regretted letting her go? And now, at last, he had his answer. His daughter's final moments were not marked by fear but by courage and selflessness. Still, a shadow lingered in Veronica's expression. She stared down at the bracelet, as though it carried more than memory, as though it carried guilt. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "She saved me, Officer Holt. But I don't know if I've ever deserved to live with that." Raymond lowered his hand, studying her closely. Her words unsettled him. There was something hidden beneath them, not just survivor's guilt, but something heavier, something she hadn't revealed. And as Veronica turned away, gripping the bracelet so tightly, it seemed it might unravel in her fist, Raymond realized he hadn't uncovered the full truth yet. He was standing at the edge of something deeper, something that could break him all over again. Raymond stood frozen, the night air thick around him. His mind reeled with what he had just heard. Emily's last acts, her courage, her calmness. It was everything he had, longed to know, and yet the way Veronica spoke left him unsettled. Her eyes carried a shadow that ran deeper than memory. "Why do you say that?" Raymond asked, his voice unsteady. "Why would you think you don't deserve to live?" Veronica's fingers tightened around the bracelet until the threads dug into her skin. She drew a breath, shaky and uneven, before answering. "Because when I walked away from that wreckage, I wasn't the same. Everything changed, not just my body, not just my face, but the way I see myself. Sometimes I wonder if the wrong person survived that day." Raymond felt his heart lurch. "Don't say that. If Emily helped you, it's because she wanted you to live." His voice was firm, but even as he said the words, he knew she was holding something back. Veronica shook her head, tears sliding down her cheeks. "You don't understand. Every morning when I wake up and look in the mirror, I don't just see me. I see her. I see Emily, and it's a reminder that I'm here because she isn't." The words struck him like a blade. Raymond staggered back, his breath shallow. The resemblance that had shaken him now seemed more sinister, more impossible. He tried to steady himself, but his thoughts spun in a whirl of fear and disbelief. "What do you mean, you see her?" he asked carefully. Veronica looked down, as though the truth were buried in the asphalt at her feet. "The doctor said it was a miracle that I survived it all, but it wasn't just survival, it was something else, something I didn't ask for, something I've never been able to explain to anyone." She looked up at him, her expression etched with torment. "And I've been carrying it alone ever since." Raymond's pulse thundered in his ears. A strange dread twisted in his gut. He had thought the resemblance was uncanny, but now, standing here, he wondered if it was more than coincidence, if fate had tied this stranger to his daughter in a way neither of them had chosen. Veronica wiped at her tears, her voice dropping to a fragile whisper. "If I tell you everything, it will change how you see me. It might even hurt more than it heals, but you deserve to know, because Emily wasn't just the reason I survived. She's the reason I live every single day the way I do." Her words hung in the air like a storm about to break. Raymond's chest ached, torn between the desperate need to know and the fear of what her confession might uncover. She drew in a slow, uneven breath. "When the bus went over the road, I thought I was going to die. I remember the sound of metal tearing, the glass shattering, the screams around me. And then, nothing. Just blackness." Her voice faltered, and she blinked quickly, forcing herself to continue. "When I woke up, I wasn't in the wreckage anymore. I was in a hospital wrapped in bandages, my body broken, my face gone." Raymond's stomach tightened. He wanted to interrupt, to ask what she meant, but the look in her eyes held him still. "The doctors told me later," she went on, "that I had been pulled from the crash so badly injured, they didn't think I'd survive. My face was destroyed. They said it was a miracle I was alive at all. But in the chaos, something else happened. Something that changed everything." She paused, her chest rising and falling as if each word was a battle. Raymond leaned closer, bracing himself. "When they found me," Veronica whispered, "my belongings were scattered. Somehow, Emily's photo and this bracelet ended up with me. They thought I was her. In that confusion, they believed they were saving Emily Holt." Raymond felt the air leave his lungs. His body went rigid, his hand gripping the doorframe until his knuckles ached. Veronica's tears fell freely now. The surgeons needed a reference for reconstruction. They used the only photo they had, your daughter's. They rebuilt my face in her image. By the time they realized their mistake, the surgery was done. And when I looked in the mirror for the first time, I didn't see me anymore. I saw her." Raymond staggered back a step as though struck. The resemblance he had struggled to explain, the face that had undone him. It wasn't coincidence. It was deliberate, born of tragedy and error. Veronica covered her face with both hands. Her voice cracked as she spoke through the tears. "Every day since then, I've lived with her reflection staring back at me. I didn't ask for it. I didn't want it. But it's there, and it's a reminder that she's gone. And I'm not." Raymond's eyes burned. The truth was unbearable, yet undeniable. The young woman before him was not his daughter, but she bore her face, carried her memory, and carried the guilt of surviving in her place. He pressed a hand against his mouth, trying to hold back the sob that threatened to break loose. For years he had prayed for some impossible chance to see Emily again. Now here she was. And yet not. He forced himself to look at Veronica. Her eyes were swollen from tears, her shoulders trembling under the weight of her confession. The face staring back at him was Emily's, but the grief behind it was Veronica's. "I don't know how you've carried this," Raymond whispered, his voice shaking. Veronica lowered her hands, her lips quivering as she tried to find words. "I've asked myself the same thing every day. Why me? Why did I live when she didn't? And worse, why did I have to live like this? With her face, her memory, her father's eyes staring back at me in every mirror." Her voice broke, and she covered her mouth, a muffled sob escaping. "I thought maybe if I dedicated my life to children, if I became the person she would have been proud of, then maybe I could earn the right to still be here. But it never feels like enough. It never erases the guilt." Raymond's chest tightened. Survivor's guilt. He had heard of it before in soldiers, in victims, but never like this. Never twisted so cruelly that a woman was forced to live inside the image of the friend she lost. He leaned on the car door for support, his breath ragged. "You think you don't deserve to live," he said hoarsely. "But you've been carrying her with you all this time, not as a thief, not as an imposter, but as someone who survived when she couldn't. And that means something." Veronica shook her head violently. "No, it means I stole her place. Every smile I've given, every moment I've lived, they should have been hers. Sometimes I wake up and wish the crash had taken me instead." Raymond stepped closer, his grief colliding with hers. "Don't ever say that," he said, his voice fierce even through tears. "Emily gave you her hand that day. She wanted you to live. If she could see you now, she wouldn't see a thief. She would see hope." For the first time, Veronica broke down completely. The bracelet slipped from her fingers and fell into her lap as sobs racked her body. Raymond's tears blurred his vision, but he reached forward, placing his hand gently on her shoulder. The warmth of the touch bridged the impossible, father and survivor, grief and guilt. "You carry her face," Raymond said softly, "but you don't carry her death. You carry her gift, and I can't hate you for that, not when it means I get to see her one more time." The two sat there, one standing by the car, the other folded behind the wheel, both undone by the weight of tragedy. But for the first time, neither carried it alone. Raymond's hand lingered on Veronica's shoulder, steadying her as she cried. For years he had wanted to ask the world why his daughter was taken. Now, at last, he had an answer. Not the one he expected, but one that gave him something greater than silence. Veronica wiped her eyes, her voice breaking. She wasn't afraid, detective. Emily's last moments, they weren't about herself. She comforted the children. She comforted me. She gave me the strength to survive. The words shattered and healed him in the same breath. Raymond's guilt, that endless question of whether Emily had suffered, dissolved into a pride so fierce it nearly crushed him. His daughter had died exactly as she had lived. Selfless, brave, unshaken by fear. Veronica lowered her gaze. "I've carried her face, her memory, her weight, but I don't know how to carry her peace." Raymond leaned closer, his voice steadier now. "Then let me carry it with you. No one should bear that alone. If you see her in yourself, then let her be a reminder of what she stood for, not of what was lost." Veronica's lips trembled, but she nodded. For the first time in years, the torment in her eyes softened. There, on the roadside, grief met grace. A father broken by loss and a survivor broken by guilt found each other. And in that impossible meeting, both began to heal. Raymond stood silently, his hand still resting on Veronica's, the weight of years of grief pressed against the fragile hope blooming inside him. For so long he had begged the universe for one last glimpse of his daughter. Now, through the most tragic twist of fate, he had been given more. Not Emily herself, but her courage living on in another. Veronica's voice was steadier now. I thought carrying her face was a curse, she admitted. Her eyes locked on his. But maybe it's a responsibility. Maybe I was meant to carry her forward, not just her memory, but her mission. Raymond swallowed hard, his chest tight. And I was meant to see you, to know the truth, to stop punishing myself for letting her go. Emily wasn't taken from me in fear. She left this world doing exactly what she believed in. That's not a curse. That's a legacy. The two of them sat in the quiet of the roadside, not officer and stranger, but father and survivor, bound by loss, but freed by truth. The bracelet lay between them, no longer just a thread of guilt, but a bridge between past and present. In the weeks that followed, they stayed in touch. Raymond visited Veronica's classroom, where children listened wide-eyed as he spoke about Emily's bravery. Veronica poured her energy into building programs for the underprivileged, finally believing her survival had purpose. Together, they launched a small foundation in Emily's name, a living memorial that turned sorrow into opportunity for others. Raymond never stopped missing his daughter, but now when he looked at Veronica, he didn't see a cruel reminder of what he had lost. He saw proof that Emily's light had not been extinguished. It had simply found another vessel to keep shining. What began as a chance traffic stop became the moment that gave both of them back their lives. Through tragedy and mistaken identity, they discovered something rare: grief could be shared, guilt could be lifted, and love, even after death, could still change the world. If this story moved you, take a moment to reflect. Do you believe love and legacy can live on through others? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your perspective. And before you go, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who might need hope today. Your support helps us keep bringing you stories that remind us all of the power of compassion, resilience, and human connection. Thank you for watching, and remember, even in the face of loss, love has a way of living on.